jeez.
Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your favorite sports talk show, I'm sure. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined, as usual, master of NFL knowledge himself.
Oh, yeah.
Drew,
Yeah.
back from the dead.
Back? I died?
Well, I mean, you've been sick about 8,000 times.
Dude, you were sick.
I was. Yeah, probably from the same crap that you had. So thanks for that. Appreciate
You brought it here.
Yeah, right. Okay. You've been sick for like 4 hours, 4 years, whatever. I don't know.
No, you're right.
Time's all relative.
You're right. 4 hours.
But we're glad you're back. We're glad you're back.
I'm glad you're back.
Yeah. Ready to go.
And I see you're
ready to mock draft.
I see you're still sipping on the hard stuff. The gin and the juice, man.
I just got to chase this. Got to chase
are
this
you
funk
done
out
with
here.
beer?
I got to. Got to chase the funk out here.
Because it's delicious.
Can't take the risk of getting sick again. But today, not to stall any longer, we are talking mock draft. We're going to go over, hopefully, each and every team. I know we never get there, guys. We always get about halfway through. See, I did it too. We always get about halfway through, and then just don't happen to get done. We're going to try to finish all 32 picks today, and we're going to need your help for that. We still want to get the comments. We still want to hear everything you have to say about each and every one of these picks. But we're going to try to power our way through the entire thing.
All right. We just got live. That's great.
Just now?
I don't know. I mean, it took me forever to get it on my phone.
Awesome.
Frank, good to see you, man. We're glad you're here as always, man. Stick around. Let's hear what you think about our pick for your favorite team. We'd love to have your input into it.
Why wait? Let's start. The Bengals, right?
Let's do it.
Normally I ask you what you're most excited about. What are the Bengals most excited about in this draft? They can't stray from the path of righteousness, right? We talked about this. They can't do it.
The birth of Joe Burrow.
He's finally a man, right?
I think he was always a man.
Well, now he's a dead man going to Cincinnati.
Ian, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us.
Yeah, good to see you, Ian. It's got to be Joe Burrow. I think we both agree. We're not gonna harp over it. We're not both talk about it. He's the best NFL quarterback from college this season.
Yes.
I get it was a mediocre. I don't know. It's a rise. Meteoric is what I was looking for.
Okay, yeah.
Rise in college football because the junior year, not that spectacular. Senior year, best thing we've ever seen. Arguably, best college season maybe ever that I have lived through.
Yeah. Frank says Bears don't have a first-round pick. True. I'm sorry.
I can talk second-round pick for the Bears. Maybe at the end. I'll just say, well, the Bears are going to take somebody in the second round. Because I did do a second round. Not sure we're going to get to it. Joe Burrow. Rounding it out.
Yeah.
Any reason you don't take him?
I do have a couple question marks.
Yes, but you still got to take him.
No, you're take him, but you're asking me, is there reasons why you wouldn't take him? And you have to have something, right? He's a one-year starter.
Yes.
It took him.
2-year starter at LSU, but 1 year of good college football.
Oh no, he didn't start the full year.
Okay, all right. He missed a few of the early games. Fine.
So
fine.
Why did it take him so long to become a starter? Why did he have to transfer out of Ohio State to become a starter in college?
Have you seen Justin Fields?
I get it.
Did you see Dwayne Haskins?
Did you see
Joe
Joe Burrow?
Players. Good players.
He had the best college quarterback season ever.
But is that him? Sometimes not everybody's the best at evaluating talent. I mean, even in the college game, great players aren't always identified early enough. Maybe Joe Burrow just needed that move away, needed that trip out of LSU, and needed the chance. I mean, yes, he did develop across his college career, right?
Yeah.
Junior year wasn't as good as the senior year. But
Right.
you got to take him. You got to take him. It can't be Tua. It can't be Justin Herbert.
No.
It can't be any of these other guys. If you're taking a quarterback, you're taking. I've heard some people say it's Chase Young. You got to take the quarterback, especially with Andy Dalton likely out of there. Andy Dalton still has 1 year left in his contract. None of it's guaranteed. They're very likely to cut him. But technically, you could draft Chase Young and hang on to Andy Dalton for another year and hope you get Trevor Lawrence. Too much math, Drew, because anything could happen. We didn't pick the Bengals. I mean, even week 10 or 11, it didn't look like the Bengals were going to have the first overall pick.
Yeah.
It took Miami really screwing up and winning a couple games for them to actually get
I don't
there.
know how you screw up and win games, but yeah, I'm agree with you. Sean, good to see you, man. We're excited for spring training to start, too. Right now, we're getting into our mock draft. First pick, Cincinnati Bengals. Take Joe Burrow.
Good to see you, Justin.
Let's move on to pick 2, the Washington Redskins.
It's got to be Chase Young, right?
There is no other pick.
You might as well just write these in marker. You can write them in blood, honestly. We're there. These are going to be the first 2 picks barring a trade. And I know the Redskins have said we're open for business. We're more than happy to trade with anybody to try that wants to try to move up and get to a Tagovailoa. But the reason that can't happen is because every team behind them, Detroit and the Giants, none of them need quarterbacks. I don't think any of those teams are moving on quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I know there's a little bit of talk like, oh, Detroit should draft Tua. They should draft Justin Herbert. Forget about all that. You had Matt Stafford coming off one of the best seasons he's had before they shut him down because the team was bad and he was still injured. You got to bring him back. I mean, this team was losing games, but they were losing them very, very close. If this team improves with Matt Stafford, they could go to be a playoff team.
Austin, good to see you. He says he's still salty about the Seahawks signing Greg Olsen. He said waste of cap space in his opinion. He says he gets that he's not the GM, but still, it doesn't make it a smart move.
I think what this move was about was saying, hey, tight ends tend to not hit free agency. And even though there's some big names out there, guys like Eric Ebron, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, the likelihood of their teams not re-signing them isn't very high. So they said, we need a tight end. We don't believe in Will Dissly and Hollister.
Or at least their
Let's
health.
go bring it.
I mean, but they bring in Olsen, I guess.
Yeah, I know. I feel the same way.
It's a head-scratcher for sure.
But they said, we need weapons, and we need it to happen now. So they bring in Greg Olsen for Russell Westbrook. We'll see what happens with that.
I don't always want to be the naysayer about all these great players coming out of college going to the NBA, but again, you got a question mark. Is Chase Young worth a second overall pick? Yes, he looks better than both of the Bosa brothers. There's no doubt about it, in my opinion. He looks better than both of them. They both were very sought after in the draft. I do got a couple things just to knock dinks in his armor.
Nitpick.
Yeah. Good run defense, not great.
Okay.
I mean, you got to agree with that.
Yes. Yeah.
The lack of numbers in big games. And when I say numbers, I mean like sacks, forced fumbles, pass deflects. These numbers are lacking in big games. Does that scare you? Picking the number 2 overall pick, going in where you're like, the Redskins want to get back into the playoffs. They want to get back to the Super Bowl. When you have a player that you're putting so much the future into this organization with this pick, and him not showing up in some of these big games, does that put a concern on you drafting him?
Ian, we appreciate you starting that watch party for us. No, I'm not concerned at all. Again, this is just set and forget. You might as well turn that card into Roger Goodell right now. Like, hey, unless the Bengals screw up, we're taking Chase Young. He's been the most dominant, probably edge rusher that we've seen maybe since Jadeveon Clowney. That's the only thing that scares me. Jadeveon Clowney was this kind of hyped when he was a junior in college, stuck around for a senior year. Didn't quite live up to the hype for that year, but everyone was still saying, hey, you just take him, don't worry about it, it's 1 year.
Yeah.
Didn't really pan out. That's the only thing I'll say with Chase Young. There's a chance that happens, but there's a chance that happens to literally everybody on this list. You just have to bite the bullet and take him. I think it's going to be great in Washington. I think they should switch back to a 43. They already have Ron Rivera there. He's run 43 for a long time out there in Carolina.
I believe they will.
You also have the former coach from Jacksonville, Jack Del Rio, ran 43 there for a long time. I think they're going to switch to a 43, and you're going to see Montez Sweat and Chase Young lining up as edge rushers for that defensive
with Allen and Payne in the middle, and you have Ryan Kerrigan alternating
as a rotational guy. Yeah, yes. I think it's a great move. Absolutely. Let's move on.
Joseph, good to see you. He said he'll be injured by week 4, unfortunately.
I think he's talking about Joe Burrow, and that very well could be the case. If you're the Bengals, you need to spend the rest of your picks on fixing the rest of your offensive line. I think that's far and away the most important thing. They had some decent play out of some of their wide receivers, even though I don't think they have great ones. Perhaps they bring A.J. Green back, and then you have a running game with Joe Mixon. This draft needs to be Joe Burrow and offensive line. We need to fix that so he doesn't die right away. Unless you're talking Chase Young. I think Chase Young really hasn't had much of an injury history.
He says, from what he heard, the Skins aren't trading out and picking Young if he's there. I imagine he will be, man. I'm like 95% sure he's
They did come out and say we're open for business, but it's going to take, quote, a king's ransom to give this pick. That's what I heard. I think it was Dan Schneider who said that, too. So, again, what is that king's ransom, and why would you
No,
trade
he said
the
no
Redskins?
Olsen by week 4.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
maybe.
definitely could happen. As for the Redskins trading, why would you trade with them when you have Detroit and the Giants who are likely to trade their pick to somebody else too? I think Detroit's the most likely trade candidate because everyone knows the Redskins want Chase Young. He's a great player. He's one of those guys that's kind of a can't-miss prospect. I can see Detroit being a little more willing to come off and not draft Jeff Okudah instead like I have him doing.
Johnny, good to see you. He says Clowney's career was made from one college play.
I mean, he had a good year on top of that, too, but if you're talking about where he hit the Michigan running back, whose name I can't remember, but he played in Jacksonville for a little bit in the pros, yeah, that really cemented it. That hit really just kind of, I don't want to say introduced Clowney to the NFL, but it was the thing that turned him from, hey, this is a great player to, oh my God, he's a superstar. You're absolutely right. That one play set him over the top, and then what happened?
Yeah. I mean, he's still a great player.
He's a very good player.
He's going to get 20,
he's a very good player.
20 plus million.
And he wants to reset the edge rusher market if you listen to him.
And he's going to probably get it.
We'll see. Not from my team, I hope.
All right, man. Pick 3. The first time we disagree so far.
Exactly. I have the Lions drafting Jeff Okudah, corner out of Ohio State. when you're talking about guys with nothing negative to say, Jeff Okuda is another one of them. He's long, he's fast, he's athletic, he makes great plays on the ball.
Yeah.
He even tackles well. He's everything you want in a cornerback.
Right.
I think he's a better prospect than Marshawn Lattimore was coming out. Even though Lattimore was a great player, he had the injury problems. You don't get that with Okuda.
Yeah.
This is the best corner in this draft.
100%. I don't disagree with you on that, and I agree that they could be looking at cornerback there, but, he comes from the Belichick tree. They always do the thing you don't expect them to do, and I see him going a different way, and I'm taking Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina, 6'6", 310 pounds. This guy is just a beast in the middle of your defensive line and could sit on the edge too because you're running a 3-4 hybrid system there with Patricia. This guy is just an athlete outside of an athlete. Like, you got your athletes and then you got this guy. He's built like a monster.
Yes.
He moves like a monster, and I think he could literally play anywhere along the edge of that hybrid system they run there. I get the whole thing. Everyone's like, Darius Slay's being traded. They're out there trying to find something for him. But you don't start with your out and in. You go in to out, and there's still issues along that defensive line. Yes, you still got some names there, but the only one that really played well was Trey Flowers, and guess what he was? A former Patriot. Kinlaw makes sense in here because he seems like someone that would fit a Patriot scheme.
I think he makes sense. He's not quite as polished, I'd say, as some of these other guys coming out. I don't know if he'll be as pro-ready, but I think his ceiling ultimately is higher when you talk about his athleticism and everything. I don't mind him being the first defensive interior guy off the board. I think it's going to be Derek Brown before him. Just personally, I think he's a little more polished. He stayed for his senior year in Auburn, so I think Derek Brown's just a little more NFL ready, and someone's going to lean on that before Kinlaw. But I don't hate that pick. I think it works great for Detroit. I just see him going secondary first. Like I said, the rumors are out there that they're shopping Darius Slay. If you're going to make a move on from your franchise cornerback, you got to bring somebody in with the rest of the secondary, or at least the rest of their cornerbacks not really showing any kind of fight in the backfield.
Joseph says Okuda for sure, maybe the O-line and Thomas and Andrew Thomas, and then he goes, Jesus, that's high, Andrew. You know what, man? This is what the NFL's about. I mean, you sit there and you go back in 2018 draft, and you had the Raiders picking, and they went and surprised everybody.
One thing I will say this too, just to kind of keep the conversation moving here. Even though the Kinlaw pick was a little bit higher, wait until this guy...
Anywhere from 1 to 20 pick. I'm with you, man. This guy's a physical freak. You just wait until you see him on the boards and on that 40 time and moving into the cones. He'll move up quickly.
Absolutely.
You'll see.
Just to round out why they won't take an offensive line is because most of their offensive line was pretty well graded and respected in Detroit, even though they didn't have a lot of success offensively, especially running the ball. Pass blocking, these guys are very good. I don't see them really moving on from anyone to go draft a tackle, even though I like Andrew Thomas and I think he's good. There's just so many other needs on this team. I think they're going to go a different direction. Let's talk about the Giants, if you're ready to move on.
Just said he was just going to say the Farrell pick. Exactly, man. It happens. It definitely happens, and I believe that Patricia is one of those people that will surprise us all and not pick the thing that you would think you would. Trust me, I was like writing the Jeff, and I had, for Jeff, and then I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I had to pick somebody else.
I'll admit I stayed chalk. I mean, there's 3 guys in this draft that I think are almost can't-miss prospects, and I think they're 3 of them, even though I think there's about 15 or 16 guys that are all going to be consistently good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Giants and how they're going to draft Jedrick Wills. I know, offensive line again. Haven't they figured it out? No, they're going to go get the biggest, nastiest right tackle they can, and they're going to put him right next to Kevin Zeitler, who plays right guard for them, and they're going to have an avenue for Saquon Barkley to run to the right and just have open space. I think that was one of their biggest problems this year. They had setback on the offensive line, especially at right tackles. Mike Remmer, the right tackle, is out of a contract. It just makes too much sense.
Yeah.
Nobody loves running the ball like Dave Gettleman. I think Dave Gettleman is going to go out and try to refresh this offensive line. He's got to bring in the big Alabama boy and put him on that right side. And you're going to see more of Saquon Barkley this year than we saw last year.
You never deny a gift basket when it's handed to you like this. Jeff Okuda goes at number 4. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can say negative about this guy. I'll give you this. He is a Jalen Ramsey comparison.
Yeah.
Possibly could be better, but the positive side to him is you're getting a more mature guy and you're getting a self-motivated guy without the mouth. That is the most important thing to think about this guy. Is this guy right now...
But don't we say corners, like the great ones, always have that mouth? Does that scare you?
Well, no, and not at this point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of players out there that didn't have a mouth for a long time, and then they got a little famous, and then they got a mouth.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So you're saying Jeff Okuda can talk in year 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Works for me. If he's there, I love that pick.
I also like edge rusher here. Obviously, I agree with you, though. Line's a possibility as well.
Anything on that defense I'm cool with, but I think they're going to go offensive line first. They've consistently said, we're fixing the offensive line, and then we'll circle around everything else.
The way my draft goes, you don't you got to take the best player.
Oh, yeah. If Okuda's there at 4, you got to take it.
Right.
I'm absolutely with that. Let's talk about the Dolphins in the first of their 38 picks.
We're back to agreeing.
Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
He's still there. I think
Yeah.
the trade-up happens. Even though we didn't do trades in this mock, it's going to happen. The Dolphins are going to trade up to pick 3 unless the Chargers or somebody else jump them. They just have the most draft capital. They have the most willingness, I think, to move up over some of these other teams. I think the Dolphins trade up to 3 and make this happen. But if he's still there at 5, they're going to take Tua.
Yeah, I really like the mobility of that he has. He is a great pocket passer, but when that pocket does start to break down, he has the mobility to get out and still throw the ball on the run. I think we've all seen it with everyone's watched Alabama play because that's like the only team that's ever on on TV. But watching this guy play, he's definitely deserving to be that second quarterback, if not the first quarterback off the board. Would not surprise me if O-line's taken here. And I'm going to go back to what...
Hey, Jeremy, how you doing?
I'm going to go back to what we've been saying is in past, before any of this stuff came, where we talked about the Dolphins going ahead and kind of doing another year where they don't try to win a bunch of games to go for the next quarterback. But we're both with the same kind of thought processes. You can't do that with Ryan Fitzpatrick sitting at the helm of your quarterback.
He'll win you 5 more games, and you'll
Yeah.
be sitting in the same scenario next year where you have to trade up to get Trevor Lawrence. Joseph says, will the Giants take a cornerback even after taking Baker and Love last year? Yes, I think so, because DeAndre Baker didn't quite live up to that pro-ready hype that I told you about, and Love was good, not good, but Love was on the team. You want to see growth out of these young guys. You can never have enough corners. These days, you spend almost half your time in the nickel package anyway. You basically need 3 corners anyway.
Yep.
But yeah, even with those guys, can't have enough of them. And if a guy this talented falls to you, you just take the best available player.
Johnny says 4 surgeries, 2 broken ankles in 3 years. I can't see why anyone would take him in the first round, period.
Because of what he's done on the field. Some guys go through stretches where they suffer serious injuries and then get over it. Some guys don't. There's definitely risk here.
I also look at the other side. We look at like Sam Bradford, was literally never injured in his college career, comes to the NFL and can't stay healthy. I mean, it's completely opposite side of that, Johnny. I mean, this is a worth the risk reward if it pans out for the Dolphins, because when you look at Tua, he has all the intangibles you want. He's a leader of men. Like I said, I love his mobility, even though he's a great pocket passer. I mean, this guy plays in an NFL-style offense against some great defense in the SEC. This guy's ready to roll week 1.
Yes, and you definitely want to have that conversation with your team doctors beforehand. You want to do all the necessary due diligence on it, but if they say, hey, he's good to go, you take him. You just have to. And what's the worst that happens? He flames out, gets hurt again, and you stink, and then you're there to draft Trevor Lawrence, and you say, okay, we'll move on.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with staying that aggressive at quarterback. The Dolphins need somebody. And I think right now, if you get a healthy Tua, the way he dominates the mid-range passing game, great things can happen with this team when you have athletes like Devontae Parker and some of these other guys that are in this draft.
Absolutely.
That guess who I'm going to put on their team? More receivers.
All right, number 6, the LA Chargers are on the board. We agree again going forward into this.
It's Justin Herbert. It has to be. Again, Phillip Rivers is gone. I think more than any other quarterback in free agency, they're like, yeah, he's out of here. Right? Andy Dalton might eventually survive on the Bengals. You might get Tom Brady returning to New England. They're like, we're done with him. Get out of here, Phillip Rivers. Thanks for everything, but no thanks anymore. I mean, it's got to be a quarterback. And I think they might try to trade up to beat the Dolphins, but who has more ammo? The Dolphins. They've got 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. The Chargers, I just don't see them having the muscle, so they're going to go take the next big-bodied, big-armed quarterback that just moves a little bit better than Phillip Rivers does.
Accurate passer, powerful arm, big-bodied quarterback, literally a Rivers 2.0. My only thing is how many championships did they win with Phillip Rivers? I know Justin Herbert's not Phillip Rivers, but you're literally taking a quarterback that looks like Phillip Rivers.
That, and I'd say consistency. Justin Herbert has been inconsistent in college. There's times where you're like, man, he's amazing. There's times where you're like, that doesn't look like a first-round pick to me. So as you get into the pros and those windows get smaller, will that continue to happen? I don't know. He's got risk too, and that's why we have Tua ahead of him. Let's talk about the Panthers, because this is the one that I'm like, they could go anywhere. We don't know what Matt Rule's going to do.
And somehow we agree again.
Yeah, we both have Derek Brown, defensive interior from Auburn. I think he's the most polished guy. I think he'll be the first defensive tackle off the board here. Again, maybe Kinlaw just outperforms him in the combine here in a week. I just don't see it happening. I think Derek Brown is going to be more polished. I don't want to compare him to Chris Jones, because Chris Jones is obviously, I think, a much better player than what he is. But the way he rushes the passer and makes influence on the run game, the way he gets his hands up, I like Derek Brown to eventually evolve into that type of player. And that's why I think the Panthers are going to be lucky to have him. They struggled against the run. I know Luke Kuechly's retired, so this could definitely be Isaiah Simmons coming in at this pick. Replace him, go get that do-it-all linebacker. I just see him going defensive interior first and trying to fix it from the defensive line.
It's not that I think Kinlaw is a better player than Brown. I just think Kinlaw fits what they're trying to do there. When you look at Carolina, Derek Brown's a great centerpiece to put in your defensive line, and such a weak run defense that Carolina had last year. They were one of the worst, and he is a plug-and-play guy right off week one. When you're talking about restarting and rebuilding your defense and you lose your leader like Luke Kuechly was, it's definitely a hard choice not to pick Isaiah as your linebacker at this pick at number 7, but can you pass on someone like Derek Brown, who, in my opinion, is probably the most for sure defensive lineman in this draft?
Well, if I'm playing devil's advocate, I think he's far and away better than the other middle linebackers.
No, he is.
And I think
absolutely.
there are deeper. It's a deeper tackle draft than it is at linebacker.
And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you build from your lines out.
Exactly. But what has more positional value? Usually the defensive line. Yeah. Usually they're influencing the play before the linebackers do. So, again, you had Luke Kuechly last year. The run defense wasn't very good. Bringing in Isaiah Simmons, even though I think he's a great player, especially in coverage, doesn't necessarily fix that run defense. I think Derek Brown probably influences that a little bit more. So they go in that direction first, and then maybe they address linebacker a little bit later. We'll move on. Let's talk about our 8th pick, the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
We actually differ here, but we're going the same position.
Same position, right. Yeah. Same position, but we differ. I'm gonna take Zedrick Willis, the offensive tackle out of Alabama. Big man. I mean, this guy's unmovable, overwhelming power of this young guy who's going to just grow, especially with an NFL workout coach behind him, making him bigger. You're talking Arizona was the bottom 5 in pass protection. I mean, it's just god-awful. They gave up 50 sacks. This guy will also help improve the run game and maintain his blocks as he does it. It's a plug-and-play kind of guy. There's a lot of talk about who's the number 1 offensive lineman in this draft. You talk about Willis as one of them when you talk about it.
Yeah, and I actually have him as the first tackle off of my board. I don't think he's the best. I think he's going to be the first, though. He's going to be just that road grinder. I think he's better as a right tackle, but I think he can play left, too. I take Andrew Thomas with this pick. I think he's the best and most mobile offensive lineman that can do it all. I mean, he can pass protect, he can run block, he's got good feet, he's got good technique, he's got the size you want to see. I think he's the most complete from that. If you're talking about spider charts and what a guy is good at everything, I think that's Andrew Thomas. He's good at everything. He could even be great at everything, but he's not a dominator in the run game like you get with Wills. He's not just a massive human being like someone like Mekhi Becton, who we'll talk about here later. He is the guy that does everything, and he does it all very well. I think you take him and you put him at left tackle to protect Kyler Murray for going forward.
Yeah, so we both agree it needs to be offensive lineman.
It's got to be.
It's got to be.
Well... Yeah, it's got to be.
It's got to be.
I think so. When you draft a quarterback, eventually you got to draft an offensive lineman.
And you give up 50 sacks out of a mobile quarterback, it's got to be, right?
It could be a receiver. I mean, outside of Larry Fitzgerald, nobody got... I did too. Jerry Jeudy's looking at us in the face. And we're going to take a second offensive lineman before we take the first receiver?
Well, that was my first offensive lineman, but yes. Yes, you are.
Okay, well.
Yes, you are.
I think they have to do it.
Sean, that sounds awesome being there at Daytona Beach, Florida, when you get to see your first Daytona. Unfortunately, you didn't get to see the race, but it's cool you had a good time, man. We're glad to hear it.
Now let's talk about Jerry Jeudy, because I have him going to the Jaguars at 9.
And I don't.
And I'm going to start with it.
But let's talk about him.
He's the best receiver. What do we talk about with the Jaguars all year long? They have DJ Shark, who's like an emerging talent on there, but he needs more talent around him. You're going to go get the best route runner, the fast wide receiver with great hands. I think Jerry Jeudy is the best in this class, but I think it's a very narrow margin between him and CeeDee Lamb. It would not surprise me if they just flipped it and said, we want the outside guy, and we're going to go get CeeDee Lamb and just put him all the way on the sideline. The moral of the story is you need weapons for whether it's Nick Foles or Gardner Minshew. They need guys to throw to in Jacksonville. They've tried to fix the offensive line in the past. I know the defense has taken hits and could use some guys too. Build on strength first. Gardner Minshew played pretty well. We just spent all that money on Nick Foles. We need to find out which one of those guys is the guy, and the best way to do that is put weapons around him.
The reason you had Nick Foles hurt and the reason Gardner Minshew was running for his life is because that offensive line isn't fixed. They're going to try to fix it. They're going to take Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, a big tackle, started all 3 years in Iowa, a big, powerful man, top athleticism. I mean, this guy's just a solid run blocker. He's a solid pass blocker. I mean, to be honest with you, maybe it's because I'm a Hawkeye fan, this is my favorite offensive lineman coming out of the draft. I'm excited about this guy. He's automatically going to help improve the run game, which is what Jacksonville wants to push when they had their running back, and I blanked on the running back's name in Jacksonville.
Leonard
Fournette, which would be absolutely help. And then one of the biggest things that the NFL really looks at is what happens after you do that initial block. You got a lot of players that can hit that first kind of block, kind of push the defensive guy back a little bit, but after that you're kind of lost because there's your second move, there's your second spin move, your bull rush. Can you maintain your block? Something that Worf's good at is maintaining his blocks.
I like Wirfs too. I think he's top 15 tackle, but I actually have him as third on my list for guys. I like Thomas better. I also like Jedrick Wills,
He's
but I
my
think he's very
second guy.
good. I think he's very good. I think he's a very good tackle. I think you have about 4 of them that are actually elite, and then you have Mekhi Becton, who people are going to draft because he's huge. But I like the pick. I don't hate Jacksonville taking an offensive lineman. They've spent on it in the past. I mean, they drafted Taylor last year too. I think they're going to try to give the experiment another year. I think.
I think
and
Worfs can go to right. I think he can play anywhere you ask him to.
I think he can too. I think there's talk about him playing guard too. I think he's athletic enough to play tackle, but I also look at him and say, I just don't know that Jacksonville's going to say, we need another offensive lineman. I see him going sexy. They're going to say, we're going to bring in Jerry Jeudy because no one's drafted a wide receiver.
Their offensive line was
I'm not saying they were
trash,
good, but
so
were the rest of the receivers. So was a lot of things in Jacksonville.
How do you know when you're...
It could be Isaiah Simmons. It could be a defensive lineman. It could be a lot of things in Jacksonville. That's my point.
Yeah.
I think they're going sex appeal. And what's sexier in the NFL than having great wide receivers?
I think they're going to go back to the grit and say, we need to protect our quarterback. Let's move on. Number 10.
Absolutely. The Browns.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mekhi Becton, I asked myself when I made this pick, I was like, what is the most Brown thing to do? Obviously, their left tackle position, not fantastic last season. It was actually the weakest point in their offensive line. So they're going to go draft somebody to replace. Would they take Tristan Wirfs, who on my board is not taken yet? No, they're going to go get the biggest, strongest, meanest looking guy they can and say he can be elite. And I do believe that about Mekhi Becton is if he goes to a good team and he gets a good offensive line coach, he could evolve into one of the most elite NFL linemen we've seen ever. Because he's 363 pounds. He's a massive human being. He doesn't move like it. He's absolutely athletic. The problem is he's just not a great blocker right now. If you look at his past sets when he was at Louisville defending in a pro-style offense, which they didn't run very often, he was giving up like pressures on like 1 out of every 7 plays. That's unsustainable, especially at the college level, because things are only going to get more difficult. I don't see Cleveland making the right decision here. I see them taking Mekhi Becton because of what he could eventually turn into. Short-term, Baker Mayfield's in trouble. Long-term, maybe this turns into a great pick. Maybe he develops. But I think right now he's the least ready of all the offensive tackles in this draft to step in and perform right away.
What's up, Michael? Glad you could join us, man. I actually have the Cleveland Browns going on offensive lineman. They're going to take Andrew Thomas, who was not selected yet in my draft. I'm agreeing with you. This guy arguably could be the best offensive line player in the draft right now. He's definitely a reliable pass protector. He's good at the run game. But I do got a little bit of like picking at him. He seems to struggle a little bit with the faster rushers coming at him. You're going to see a lot of that in the NFL. He also seems to be surprised by the blitz consistently when he has that second guy coming in. Now, you could probably say that about every offensive lineman on the board, but when you're talking about taking someone that top 10 pick, top 7 pick, 8 pick, 6 pick, that's stuff that you want to see you can be able to clean up. You could probably clean it up. I have no doubts in this, but the Cleveland Browns are definitely going to be protecting Baker Mayfield at this point, and Andrew Thomas is that guy at this spot at number 10 in my mock draft.
That's perfectly fine. We'll move on and talk about the Jets, if you're ready. The team that, again, a lot of needs, Drew. They could go offensive line here, but we've already had a bunch of offensive linemen off the board. So I'm going to go another direction. I think I've been harping on this for years. They need weapons for Sam Darnold.
We're agreeing with the
So what are they
position.
doing? They're taking CeeDee Lamb. And I know you don't have Jerry Jeudy off your board, and we both see him as the best wide receiver in this class. So that's where you're going. I'm going CeeDee Lamb. Again, elite athleticism. He's got size. He's good at breaking tackles. He run blocks well. He does everything you ask a wide receiver to do. He's just not Jerry Jeudy. He doesn't quite have that route running ability that he does yet. And the other negative I have for him, and this is the only other negative I have for him, is he did it in the Big 12. Historically bad defenses. Doesn't carry the same weight as a guy doing it at Alabama, going up against the best defenses in the SEC every week.
Yeah,
but Jerry Jeudy's gone, so you got to take somebody. The Jets are going to take CeeDee Lamb.
Well, not in my mock draft. They actually get the best receiver in the draft. In both of our opinions, they're going to get Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama for the Jets. I agree. He's a fantastic route runner. He's a good blocker down the field. This guy has everything you need, including the speed. I'll get into CeeDee Lamb later, but he's definitely a question mark here. Maybe you take him instead, but in both of our opinions, Jerry Jeudy's the best. He's available at number 11. The Jets take him.
Absolutely. We'll move on. Let's talk about the Raiders. Because, again, like a lot of these teams, I've been saying it a lot, they could go a lot of directions. I think they're going for value.
And we're back to agreeing.
I think they're going for value. They're going to go for a guy that, again, not a lot of depth behind him. They're going to go for a guy that can come in and is a definite need in Oakland, especially with Vontez Burfict seemingly suspended all the time and Brandon Marshall basically aging his way out of the NFL. They're going to go and take Isaiah Simmons, middle linebacker out of Clemson. This guy is a coverage freak. They've lined him up in the slot to cover wide receivers. They've played him at safety some. They've played him over the middle. He's covered everybody.
Yeah.
He's a little small when you talk about linebackers, but today's linebackers these days, they're shrinking. I mean, I think he's only 230 pounds.
He is, but he's 6'4", 230 pounds.
You compare it to some of these other linebackers that are like 219 pounds. I mean, that's just the way the NFL is going. You need fast guys that are going to be able to keep up with these tight ends. I think Isaiah Simmons is by far, hands down, the best linebacker. I think most people in the country agree with me. He's athletic. He's sideline to sideline. A lot of positives. Covers well. Defends the run well. Nothing negative I can say.
Yeah. Michaels, I do have Jeffries going in the first round. I don't want to give it up just yet, man, but I have him going in the first round.
I do too. I actually have him as a late first round pick. We'll get into that later. I have a lot of wide receivers going in this first round because I just start a run basically, and I say, well, this team needs a wide receiver. This team needs a wide receiver, and teams will get scared. I think once that run starts in real life, you'll see a lot of the guys come off the board. We do see Jeffries as both a first round pick. There's been a lot of negativity about him, but we will talk about him a little bit later. And Cody says, hopefully Jeffries falls to the Jets in the second round pick. Would you go back to back at wide receiver? I don't hate it, but I think I think they just need offensive line so bad they got to go with one of those guys.
I mean, yeah. I mean, why not? If Sam Darnold's your guy, you got Le'Veon Bell. You worked on your defense last year. That makes sense.
I think a lot of it depends on what they're able to do in free agency. I think you can't just put this same offensive line out there that got Le'Veon Bell killed. You know, the $17 million man, and say, oh, well, we'll just draft a bunch of wide receivers. But if they can address it in free agency, if they can bring in one or two guys, maybe make a trade.
There's no doubt they need to work on their offensive line.
They could potentially go back-to-back wide receiver.
At number 12, the Raiders, I have taken Isaiah Simmons as well. I think this guy is a sideline run defender and has the ability to pass protect as well. He's got 3 interceptions, 8 pass deflects last year. I mean, this guy's all over the board. He broke 100 tackles. This is a great pick at number 12. That's just the best way for me to put it. They're taking the best player at the best possible time.
And Cody says if Robbie Anderson leaves, the Jets will have to go back-to-back. I don't think they have to go back-to-back. You could probably wait in this draft class and go get someone like a Jawan Jennings in like the 3rd or 4th round. And I'm not going to say he's going to be the greatest wide receiver, but he could play like a Deebo Samuel kind of role for you. I think you could take one in the 1st and then wait, take another guy in the 2nd, maybe take another guy in the 3rd, and then get a later round wide receiver because this class is so deep.
Yeah. Number 13, the Indianapolis Colts.
This was a tough one for me.
You want me to go first?
No, I mean, well, if you want.
No, I mean, you were saying it's a tough one for you. Do you want me to go first?
Well, I've already got it here. I don't need to think about it. Am I going to switch it right now on the show?
You might.
The Colts are going to go with an offensive lineman to replace Anthony Costanzo. And even though they could go with a couple other positions, there are still some good defensive interior guys on my board. There's still some good edge rushers, I think, that would help them out. I think the Colts are going to go and try to reinforce a position that's been their strength for the past couple of years, pretty much since they've brought in their guard, whose name I can never remember, even though he's the best one.
Quentin Nelson.
Quentin Nelson, thank you. They're going to need someone to play next to him. I think they're going to take Tristan Wirfs, who is, again, still on my board, long gone in yours, but I think they're going to take Tristan Wirfs to go in for Costanzo. Even if Costanzo returns to the Colts, I think it's good to have that succession plan because a guy who's not injured, talking about, I'm ready to retire, tells me he's not long for the football world. I think even if it's not this year, you could have Tristan Wirfs come in next year and slot in and have that year to kind of build up and get ready for the NFL. I think this pick makes sense, especially if a guy this talented is there for them at 13.
Cody, Henry Ruggs, the 3rd is probably who you're talking about. This is a fast little guy from Bama. That
is Henry Ruggs.
Yeah. Indianapolis Colts. I get it. You know, offensive line's huge. They have an offensive line that's going to lose one of their starters who hasn't missed a game in like 3 years. I get you want to replace that. They do have a guy that comes off the bench and plays well and doesn't miss games. And this is something that they could focus on later in the draft. I think the number one problem right now is whoever is at quarterback going into this season, you need weapons. T.Y. Hilton, as good as he is, can't stay healthy and can't be the only option at receiver. This is where you bring in CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma. This guy has excellent route running ability, good hands, size, strength, and a great after-the-catch ability. My only knock on this guy is he's just not a burner, but that does not make him not worth picking in the top 15 picks.
I agree. I mean, he's not Tyreek Hill, but he plays from the outside. He's got great catch radius, and he's not slow. He's still pretty quick. don't have a problem with it. If he's there, I think the Colts would benefit from bringing in another outside wide receiver, especially with T.Y. Hilton getting a little bit older. You got Paris Campbell from last year, but he hasn't quite taken some of the steps that some of the other rookies did last year. He had a couple good plays, but wasn't a game changer. I think bringing in a game-changing wide receiver is great for them if he's still there. I just don't see him making it quite that far. One thing we did neglect for Indianapolis is both drafting Julian Love.
Yeah. We didn't do that.
I'm sorry, Jordan Love.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. Just saying. He's the next Pat Mahomes if you listen to some of these analysts.
Yeah.
Right. The guy who can't handle any kind of rush. Next Patrick Mahomes. Makes sense. Let's talk about the Buccaneers.
Let's do it. Number 14.
I got Javon Kinlaw going here. Huge drop for me. This is a guy that I was like, I can't believe he's at 14. But then I was like, would I take him before? No. Would I take him before that? No. Would the Browns take him? I think they need a tackle. So I have him falling all the way to 14, even though he's a physical freak. There's a very good chance he goes to this combine, outperforms everybody. They're like, oh my God, look at what an athlete he is. And then he moves up in the draft board. But he's still not quite as polished as a guy like Derek Brown. That's why I still see him as being the second D tackle off the board here. I think the Buccaneers are going to bring in a great interior pass rusher here that's going to help out that D-line and that Todd Bowles has spent so much time rebuilding.
I'm going O-line here. Buccaneers need it. They need to protect Jameis Winston if he stays there. They need a run game. But I don't fully believe in the Buccaneers and what they draft. And I'm kind of with you on the Becton thing. They're just going to draft the tackle out of Louis. Oh, gosh, can't talk.
Louisville.
There you go. And he's huge. I mean, this guy is massive. And he is athletic for his size. There's no doubt about it. He doesn't overpower blockers. Even though he's a massive guy, you're not seeing him push anybody.
Not in the pass game. In the running game, I've seen him just basically tear guys in half.
I think
He's
just not overpowering him, and he's not. You're thinking about in college, man. Think about that in the NFL. These guys are way bigger, way stronger.
A lot of the tape I've watched on him. I mean, he's like taking guys to the sideline.
He needs to trim his weight down. He needs to become smaller. 370 pounds at a 6'7" body frame. It'd be okay to be 350. It'd be okay to be 350.
Well, if he moved like a 370-pound man, I'd absolutely agree with you. But
he doesn't.
He's athletic.
He doesn't. I'm giving you that. But just think if he knocked off some of that fat, gained a little muscle, which he'll do in the NFL, especially with those trainers, this guy could be the best offensive lineman out of this draft, or could be the worst.
Well, I agree with you. He's got that ceiling, but I think the floor is also the lowest with him. He's definitely the speculative pick that you're saying we believe in developing players when we take him, and we're going to try to develop into one of the most influential left tackles in the league. And again, we said the same thing about Greg Robinson, right? This guy's a mountain of a man. He's going to be the best NFL lineman ever. And then
he gained 157 pounds.
Well, he got caught with it. That's okay, though. We'll move on.
Number 15, the Denver Broncos.
Henry Ruggs, that little wide receiver out of Alabama.
No,
Josh. Why did they take him?
Josh Jones, offensive lineman.
Could be. I like that pick.
Yeah.
I like Josh Jones a lot. I think he's my 4th rated tackle here. I think he's the guy flying under the radar because he played at Houston. Nobody really talked about him, but I think he's very technically sound, even if he doesn't have the athleticism of some of those first 3 guys we talked about. I'm not counting Mekhi Becton in that. Again, more athletic, but also not as good of a lineman, I think, as Jones.
Right.
I think they got to go wide receiver. This offense just lacked dynamicism. They had nobody outside of Cortland Sutton who could perform at the wide receiver group. They traded away Emmanuel Sanders. It just makes too much sense. They're going to go and get the fastest and most game-breaking wide receiver they can, and that's Henry Ruggs. I don't know that he's as good of a receiver as we've seen him be in college. I think he's got a lot of physical tools, and potentially he could be that guy. I'm just not as convinced. Everybody telling me, he runs great routes. I've seen some stuff where I just disagree with that. I'm not saying he runs terrible routes, but I just don't believe he's up to the hype. But someone's going to take him because he's very likely going to run in the 4.2s. He's probably going to hit 4.29, maybe even 4.28.
He'll probably be the fastest runner in the 40 time.
And when he does that, he's going to move way up draft boards because, like you said, everybody saw Kansas City just win a Super Bowl with fast wide receivers. They're going to try to copy that. That's why I have the Broncos taking him here at 15, and there's going to be a couple teams behind him that have to adjust their picks because of that.
I like Josh Jones. I think this is where he falls, the Denver Broncos. There's no doubt about it. They need to fix their offensive line. They have issues with the run game. They have issues with the pass protection. They obviously got those 2 questions fixed with the quarterback and the running backs. I agree the receiver core needs to be worked on, but you see a lot of Courtland Sutherland. He made his first Pro Bowl this year. You kind of want to lean on that a little bit more. You went out and picked Noah Fant. You kind of got some receiving options. The problem is at this point is you don't have time to give it to him. You grab someone like Josh Jacobs out of Houston. He's a very good pass blocker. He's a good size. He's the agility you want to see in an offensive tackle that can move. I think people are sleeping on him in this draft. I agree.
I do
with you.
too. I think he's a great player, and I don't hate the pick. Moving Garrett Bowles to the right side would not break my heart. But I think Denver's got to go another direction. They have Mike Munchak as their offensive line coach. I think they're going to give him another year to try to fix it because the back half of the year was better. I'm not saying he was good, but it was better with that offensive line. So wouldn't hate the pick, especially with a guy like Munchak there to train up someone like Josh Jones. But I just see them going with wide receiver instead because they need some dynamicism, and you've got to keep up with the Chiefs, right? Yeah. Cortland Sutton isn't keeping up with the Chiefs in your division. Let's talk about the Falcons next. And as we go into it, I want to talk about them being one of the luckiest teams. Another guy that I was like, surely, he's gone before here. A.J. Epineza, when I talked about the draft, I said there's two high-tier edge rushers, and you got Chase Young, you got a little bit of a gap, you got Epineza from Iowa, and then you've got basically everybody else that's huge question marks with him.
You were looking over my shoulder when I was doing this draft, weren't
you? Your and everyone else's shoulders because everyone has the Falcons taking an edge rusher. I just think they're lucky that a guy like this is there. Yeah. I think a guy like Epineza could certainly be a much higher pick than this.
If it wasn't for Chase Young, you'd be talking about him being the number one edge rusher.
Yes. He's large. He's physical. Even though I don't know that he's quite as fast as you'd like to see from an edge rusher, he's not going to be the guy that gets you like 18 sacks in a season. He's going to get you 10. And he's going to be a dominant force in the run game. He's the guy that doesn't move. And you can maybe protect some weaker linebackers behind him because this guy basically will be out there eating up right tackles, in my opinion. Love this pick. If he falls there, I think Atlanta is very fortunate to have this kind of edge rusher fall to them in this kind of draft.
No, I'm right there with you. And, you look at the 3 years he put up, he did 26 and a half sacks. That's big for college numbers, especially in Iowa. I think the last time they had a back double-digit sack, it was like 2002, 2003. So it's been a long time since Iowa had any kind of edge rusher presence like this. I think he fits better in a 3-4, so when you look at Atlanta and what they're trying to do, it might be the best thing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk Cowboys.
Let's do it.
This is a pick that I think they could trade up to.
And again, we agree.
Yes, but I think they could trade up here to go take this guy. Why? Because there's not a lot of high-end safeties in this draft. There are a few of them that, again, have their problems. There's things we like about them, things we don't like about them. But there's one guy who seems like he can do it all, and I think that's why they're going to take him. Xavier McKinney. Great in pass coverage.
Yes.
Very good in run defense. Mm-hmm. He can blitz. He can stop the run. He's not shy on contact. He can play over the top. He can run with wide receivers. He can run with tight ends. He can cover running backs. He does just about everything you want to see. Maybe he's not the best at it. He's not the best guy at that in the class.
My first note is steady, good receiver in Alabama.
Yes.
That's almost all you had to say for me.
Exactly. I think if you look at Dallas, they could use some safeties. They need some help in the back end of their defense. They've already got the big names up front. I think they need to work in the back end. This pick just makes so much sense that when things ultimately get shuffled and they don't wind up taking him and they take like Delpit out of LSU instead, I'm going to be like, okay, I give up. Why do I mock anything?
I'm right there with you. You knocked everything that I put down on my notes about McKinney. This guy's just a stud all around. It's, one of my biggest things is if you cover a receiver and you can cover a tight end and a running back out of the backfield, you're a safety in the NFL. That makes you one of the better ones. Ian says Iowa's proven themselves to be a good program for NFL prospects.
They're turning into a pipeline.
They've been doing it for years.
Yeah. They're turning into a pipeline. I agree.
I know you know that, Ian. But
even though it's not Ohio State or Alabama that you're getting like 8 guys out of every class, they're consistently turning out good pros, whereas a lot of those other guys don't quite always become good pros.
Right.
Let's move on. Let's talk about the Dolphins. With
number 18.
Their second of 3 picks in this first round overall.
Yeah.
Where do they go?
Well, in my opinion, they go to the defensive line. They're going to get an edge rusher. They're going to go out and get an outside linebacker. And I always mess up on this guy's name, so you're going to help me.
Clavion Chason.
Yes, Chason. It doesn't look like Chason, but Chason. LSU guy. This guy's just a lot of upside. He has a little bit of bang-up injuries. He's got an ankle injury this year, but he still went out and did 6.5 sacks, 60 tackles. It's a little bit of a plus side there. Problem is, 2018, he missed most of the season with a knee injury. You don't like seeing that, but the upside that this guy brings, especially in the Miami Dolphins, where they're not looking for right now, they're looking for in the future. This could be a great guy to bring into that defense.
Bees asks, how do we feel about the new playoff format proposal where they're going to have 7 teams from each conference? I'm a little on the fence. Again, if you're the second team in the conference, losing that bye kind of sucks. I think to balance it out, instead of saying that 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5, and then number 1 gets a bye for that playoff format, I would say if you're the second, you get to pick your opponent, and you get to play at home. I think that would make things more interesting. I think there's not every year where the worst team winds up as the lowest seed. But But it remains to be seen. I think it would make for some interesting kind of content, and it would be more fair to the team that now has to play instead of getting the bye.
I don't like it. I think it feels odd to me, to be honest, if they did 8 teams and make half the league get into it. I think I'd be more okay with that than the 7. The 7 feels odd.
I like 7 better, and the reason I like 7 better is because 8, if you're not playing for a bye, at what point are you like, we're in the playoffs, let's rest everybody. Let's just hang out.
Who says they can't get a bye?
Well, at 8, you're not getting a bye. Everybody has to play in the first round.
No, not necessarily.
You'd have to give a first bye to the first 2 teams, then you'd have 6 left, and you have to give 2 byes to somebody else. So unless those teams are getting multiple byes, and in that case, you're talking about rest versus rust, where we have to take 3 weeks off playing football.
Or 4 teams take byes. Everyone that wins their division takes a bye.
Then you're still stuck with 6.
No, they
and then
still can
the
play.
second round has to play the bye.
What do you mean second round? What? No. What?
If the first 4 get a bye... Okay, we don't have time to get into this.
Dude, math is great.
Yeah, but if the first 4 get byes, you have 4 teams playing.
Yeah.
2 remain. There's 6 left.
Okay.
You can't have 6 people
Well,
play, or you wind up with 3, or then you get a bye another week later, and then everyone's talking.
You still make it work out.
Because it would be odd. What are they going to play? 3 teams going to play each other on the same game?
What? No. What are you talking about?
6. You would have 6 teams
3
left
teams
after the
play.
first round.
There's 3 games, 6 teams. What are you talking about? There's 4 teams sitting there, 4 played, 2 are left.
If there's 8,
4,
no.
and then you're bringing there's
yeah, but
3
they have
games.
to take the. Okay, yeah, and then what happens in the next round? Well, you have 3 teams left.
Someone gets in their bye.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly my point. It
Someone
doesn't
gets in their
sit,
bye.
and then yeah, okay.
But they got.
I don't like that.
It's not a bye to
don't
bye.
like that.
Huh? And I don't like the 7.
Pretty crazy. You could have a team go on multiple buys while someone's like 28 weeks into the season.
Maybe then
don't love
maybe there's only still 2 buys.
B says triple threat football match. I agree. Whoever can score the most points, and you get to like rotate players on defense. 2 defenses working.
I
together.
don't like the 7, so I completely disagree. It's 6. It sucks. It is what it is.
It's all wild. That's all I can say. It's all wild. 7 at least works because then 1 gets a
half the
bye,
team.
and then you're on.
Half the season or half the league gets in. That's it. That's the only way I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
All right, good.
Well, let's go back to the draft.
Yeah.
Now that we've hit that pothole. Dolphins, what are they doing?
I thought we talked about it. It's you.
Oh, my turn?
Yeah.
All right, well, they're taking Josh Jones. Again, a couple picks ahead of you, or behind you in your draft. I think they're going to take an offensive tackle to protect their newly fragile quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. You're going to take him, you're going to put him there, and hope that this pro-ready offensive lineman is going to be able to produce from day one.
Yeah.
The rest of this line needs work, too. Don't worry. There's more on that later. Maybe not in this mock draft, but there's more on that later in this draft with all those picks they have. They need to protect their quarterback. Second pick has got to be offensive tackle. Especially with theirs moving on to Houston.
Yeah. Well, they played most of their season without him, so.
How'd that go?
And they won more games than the late end of their season.
They
so
did.
It did well.
They
did
did,
well.
but it was still pretty atrocious play from the offensive line. Ryan Fitzpatrick just said, I don't care. We're just winning this game.
Moving on, number 19th pick, the Vegas Raiders.
Courtesy of the Bears.
Courtesy of the Bears. In my opinion, take Henry Ruggs III, the fastest guy in this draft. The Raiders, yes, I know Al Davis is gone. I know John Gruden and Mike Mayock are at the helms picking this, but Mark Davis still gets his say. He's going to look at his dad in a picture and say, Dad, I'm going to go pick the fastest guy in this draft and be like you were. They're going to pick Henry Ruggs out of Alabama. The Raiders still have the speed. They still want a fast guy. They just saw the Chiefs win the Super Bowl with fast receivers. You bring someone in like Ruggs, you add him into the mix with everybody there. It makes sense.
It does.
It makes sense an over top receiver.
If he's there, this could absolutely be their pick. I actually have them taking another fast guy, Laviska Shenault. The difference is he's taller. He can play in the outside from a physical standpoint, but if you look at what he's done in Colorado, he has done a lot of screens, a lot of short passing. There's questions about his down the field ability. What is he going to do when the NFL is asking him to run deep down the field passing plays instead of a lot of these short passes where he's breaking tackles after the play and making big things happen? I think Oakland just needs a big play kind of guy, and I think with Henry Ruggs off the board, Laviska Shenault makes a lot of sense. He's not talked about as much as some of these other guys, but he has like the second or third highest broken tackle rate for wide receivers in this college draft class. He's the guy that you throw the screen to and you just let him work. I think it makes a lot of sense. Even if he's not running in that 4.2s, he's probably running in the 4.3s, which is only a little bit slower. I think it makes sense for Oakland, but he's got some negatives. I can't argue with that.
Yeah, no, he
doesn't run a lot of pro-level routes.
B says, after seeing the post-car posted with Mac, what are the chances of possible reunion in Chicago if it is feasible? If it's not feasible?
If they get Tom Brady out in Las Vegas,
not feasible?
I think it could be feasible. If they get Brady out in Vegas, I'd say 80% chance he winds up in the Bears. I would upgrade from that. You're getting a similar style quarterback with much higher ceiling than I think you get with Mitch Trubisky. He's done it in the past. I mean, he's been an MVP caliber quarterback when he's had an offense around him.
I want to say that Trubisky hasn't reached his ceiling.
Just don't give up multiple picks for it.
But it's like, how do you not hit your
move
ceiling?
on right now from Derek? Or if Derek Carr's there, how do you not move on?
Yeah, it'd be. Yeah.
I would do it. I like Derek Carr. Maybe I'm a Derek Carr guy. I would do it in a heartbeat if the Bears could get it. But I'm not giving up multiple first-round picks to make that happen. I'm not giving up a single one, actually. I'm going to wait for Oakland to cut him. Because that's untenable. You can't be paying Derek Carr $20-some million and Tom Brady the $30 that he's supposedly asking for.
Right.
But it makes sense. We'll move on. We'll talk about our next team, which is actually Jacksonville. Wait, did you talk about the Raiders? You did.
I did talk about
Henry Ruggs. Yeah. We both have them taking receivers because we know it's not been good enough.
Right.
We'll move on. We'll talk about Jacksonville and their second pick, courtesy of the LA Rams. I have them taking Trayvon Diggs.
We agree it's a secondary.
Cornerback out of Alabama. I think this guy, again, checks a lot of boxes. Maybe he's not quite as physical or quite as good as Jeff Okudah. Maybe he's not quite the same guy as some people have LSU's corner ahead of him, which is Kristen Fulton. But I like him. I think he's a very solid guy. He's not quite that home run prospect, but I think he's that step below that you're like, we're probably drafting a very good player in this spot. And let's face it, Jacksonville needs a cornerback now. That defense has tons of holes on it, especially with Jalen Ramsey on his way out. Why not take that pick with the Rams and just go for the parity and say we're drafting your replacement right here with Trayvon Diggs?
I agree. It has to be the secondary. I think they actually take Grant Delpit of LSU, the safety. I know, corners in need, but this guy won the Jen Thorpe Award about the best defensive back in 2019 in the college rankings, and this guy did it while having an ankle injury as well, holding him back. Needs to work on to being a better tackler. You don't like hearing that about safety, but the nice thing about this is he might not stay at safety. He could go in and play corner as well. I mean, I get that's what he played.
I wouldn't mind putting him in the slot.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that can do it all. He definitely can rush the quarterback at that slot position. I mean, this guy has a good chance of being a great player in the NFL.
I have Delpit coming off the board later in my mock draft. Let's talk about some of the scary stuff. He missed about a quarter of his tackles in his last season at LSU. As a safety, especially with this guy being your free safety, usually in the NFL, when you miss that tackle, the guy's gone.
I agree it's scary, but he had 65 tackles off of a bum ankle.
Yes, and also on top of that, his coverage ability is absolutely flawless. He is the best coverage safety in this draft, period.
Yes.
There's no debate. He's got the athleticism. It's just the tackling. That high of a rate, it scares me. I don't say I hate this pick, but he's definitely one of those guys that you're hoping you're going to fix that part of his game. He kind of reminds me of Kevin Byard because that was one of his negatives coming into it. They're like, this guy's a ball hawk. He had like 19 picks at MTSU, made tons of plays on the ball, comes in, works on his tackling, and by year 2, I mean, he's one of the most balanced safeties in the NFL. So it can happen. It's happened before. You knew I had to talk about my team.
No, it was great. It was a great comparison.
But I do like Byard as that kind of comparison, even though Byard was not as lauded coming out of college. Again, he was a third-round pick. But still, I think Delpit can be that kind of guy that develops his game.
You don't win the Jim Thorpe Award without being notified as one of the best defensive backs in the
You just need the right NFL coaches to develop his game. And
Correct.
is that in Jacksonville? I don't know, but of course they might try.
Right. B says, how do we feel about Kings Canyon returning to the Apex map rotation tomorrow?
Psyched.
I think we'll be on it.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on to talk about the Eagles. I think this is another one of those interesting picks. I'd love this to be Henry Ruggs. Everybody's mocking Henry Ruggs here, but I'm like, I don't see him being there. Everyone's going to look at the Chiefs and be like, they won because all those guys were supremely fast. I mean, other things too. But they won with supremely fast wide receivers.
Only that.
So I need them. I need to have them. And I think that's why you're going to have guys like Shenault off the board. You're going to have guys like Henry Ruggs off the board at this point. So what do? You're the Eagles. I think you're looking at it and you're saying, we can't keep going with these monstrous wide receivers that can't generate separation. We're going to go draft Denzel Mims, a guy nobody's probably told you about yet, out of Baylor. Even though Baylor ran a bunch of weird stuff, he ran basically a very simple route tree there, where it was basically you're going deep or you're coming back on a curl. I mean, it really was not very complex. When he got to the Senior Bowl, he took a more complex route and was just frying guys left and right. So when I see that and I see the speed and everything he can bring to it, I think Denzel Mims is, again, another one of these wide receivers flying under the radar because the class is so deep. Yeah. Any other year, this is probably a first wide receiver coming off the board, maybe second.
Yeah,
he's that good of a guy.
We agree that it needs to be a wide receiver. Let me get to Cody's comment here. He says Byard had to tackle Derrick Henry in practice. You'll get better after doing that.
It helps. It absolutely
definitely helps. No doubt about it. they gotta go wide receiver. I think if you had a need a pick right now, there's ever been one, it's receiver at the Philadelphia Eagles training camp. You need a receiver there.
Yeah.
I get everyone saying that you need the speed. It makes sense. They bring in Deshaun Jackson. They want that speed there, but I think the guy they're missing was Alshon Jeffrey. And what did Alshon Jeffrey give Carson Wentz? A big body receiver that's going to do the middle stuff, that's going to turn around, move the chains. You got Hurts, you got Goddard. Those are the guys that can kind of open the top, and hopefully Jackson will come back healthy. In my opinion, you bring in someone like T. Higgins. He's 6'4". He's a big guy out of Clemson. This guy can catch the ball, and he's very good after it as well. Bring in someone like him, he kind of Alshon Jeffrey mixture. He's not as tall as he is because Alshon Jeffrey's just a beast. But 6'4" ain't a bad target.
I think Jeffrey's like 6'1". I think Jeffrey's actually shorter. He plays bigger than he is.
Yeah, well, I always thought he was bigger than that.
I don't think so.
He's not like
Pretty sure
6'6"?
he's not. We'll check the record afterward, but that's okay. No,
Bees,
Jeffrey,
let us know. Alshon Jeffrey, former Bears. I know you got it, man. Let us know how tall he is.
Just really quick, the counter punch is interesting. Because everyone's like, we got to get the little fast guys, right? We just got to get the speed. We got to try to be the Chiefs. I don't hate the counterpunch. You get T. Higgins, you get Alshon Jeffrey healthy on the field. You got Arcega-Whiteside out there. You have 3 of the tallest wide receivers in football. You could just mow people down. I just think they need the athleticism. They brought in Deshaun Jackson for it, and when he got injured, that offense kind of stalled. I know they had some other injuries at wide receiver. I think they just need some athleticism. And even though I think T. Higgins has underrated separation ability, he's not slow for a guy that's 6'4". I just see them going a much smaller guy. That's why I see Mims. Actually, I have T. Higgins going to the Bills in the next pick.
Yeah.
I think this makes more sense, and I'll tell you why. Because I think they need this
6'3".
big catch radius. Okay, well, what we split it? You said 6'6". I said 6'1".
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll split it.
I'll say this about T. Higgins, though, going to Buffalo. When you have an inaccurate passer, sorry, Bills fans, but you have a semi-inaccurate passer, you need a guy that's going to be able to go make plays on the ball when it's not exactly where it needs to be. That's what T. Higgins is. Ultimately, that's where he's going to play his best role. You already have the over-the-top with John Brown. You already have the slot receiver with Cole Beasley. Now you're going to get the other outside wide receiver who's going to go run an 8-yard curl, squat, and then wait for that ball to come out there and just basically play jump ball. You're getting a power forward with T. Higgins. And that's what I think the Bills need. They need a possession guy that when they need to get hard yards and they can't run the ball for it, you've got this guy to lean on.
Cody, he asked if we fish. I do. Jacob does not.
I don't. I would rather drive the hooks through my eyes than be out there all day doing that.
You fish those 12-ounce curls.
Yeah, exactly. I only fish things out of the cooler. That's it. But that's okay.
The Bills, I agree. Receiver is a need there, but really they got there without it. They did it kind of on their defense and their run game, and I'm going to focus on something that they might be losing. If they let like Shaq Lawson go, is the edge. They're actually going to go after a guy, and I'm going to try it. It's Yoder Gross Matos out of Penn State.
Yoder Gross Matos. That was close.
That was close. This guy's a good run defender. Not only can he get up to the quarterback, I think he can play anywhere across that defensive line. So the rotation piece, the guy that can kind of play everywhere, and hopefully they keep Shaq Lawson there. I think he's a great addition to this defense and keeps their strength going.
There's 3 guys that I see in the same kind of scenario: Clavion Chason, Julian Aquara, and Yoder Gross Matos, that are those question marks that you like. You look at the physicality. You look at what with their body types, what they could do. They check all the boxes. They look like defensive ends that you can lean on, and you say, this guy could be a great pro. But in college, we didn't see the production levels that you want to see out of a guy coming into the NFL. If they had that, we'd be talking about these guys going in the top 10. I think all 3 of those guys were missing the production, and I think that's why they drop a little bit in this draft. I think this is a good spot for him. This is a good speculatory, and we all know the Bills need to get better at edge.
Penn State used him everywhere. He played literally nose tackle to the edge. I mean, you can't really blame the guy fully for not being there all the time, but when he finds his place in the NFL and they develop those skills, I mean, he didn't get 9.5 sacks in Penn State this year by pure luck. I mean, this guy does have the physicality you want. He's got the
play to play. Again, he's not influencing as much. Yes, the sack numbers are good, but I mean, you can have a lot of sacks and then just not be there for a lot of plays. And that's kind of what Gross Matos kind of was for me. When I was watching some of his tape, I watched a lot of the positive and a lot of the negative tape. There were plays where he gets taken out of it. He gets beaten. And you can develop out of that.
Maybe with the Bills, with a great defense around them.
You don't have to be a superstar.
You don't have to be a superstar.
Yes. I agree. I like that pick. I had Higgins instead, but I think the Bills could go either one of those directions. More importantly, Ian says he agrees with me on fishing. So
no, it's more important, as Luke says, ice cold Luke here.
Good to see you, Luke.
Good to see you, man.
Absolutely. Let's talk Patriots. The most interesting pick, right? Is Tom Brady there? If he's not, what do you do? Well, I said he's not. If he's not there, whether he is, you got to go for the quarterback.
Well, Sean's asked Tom Brady going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Is that going to happen?
No.
And
the reason I say no is because if you're Tom Brady, you're like, I only got 1 or 2 more years to win this thing.
You're not going there.
Is Vegas going to be ready to win this year?
You're not playing Patrick Mahomes twice and getting into the playoffs. You're not doing it. Sorry.
Not with that roster. I don't think he would shy away because he's like, oh, Mahomes is in that division.
I think he would.
I don't.
I think he would.
I think if he was like, let's move the Patriots. Well, no, he wouldn't want to move the Patriots for anything out of that division. But if they do it, if they move the Chiefs into the AFC East, because that would make sense.
You don't.
I don't think it would be like
go to the
Brady's
AFC West
leaving.
and go, I'm going to dominate that division
With this roster, no.
or any roster that's there.
If you took the Bears right now and put Tom Brady on it and put him
the
in, like
Bears
created
aren't
like
in
a
the
super
AFC
division.
West.
Well, I know, but I'm saying if you took them and put them there, do you think he would shy away from signing with a good team like that? And I think the Bears can be a good team.
We'll beat them.
That's not the argument, but I'm saying would Tom Brady shy away from it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about how they're drafting Jake Fromm.
Let's talk how they're drafting Cole Kmet, the tight end out of Notre Dame.
Yeah. I just don't see it. I don't think there's a good. I don't think there's a first round tight end.
I want to call him K-Mitt because that's how it is.
I think it's Kmet. Yeah, it's Cole Kmet.
I'm good with it. Go ahead.
I'm going to commit to this. Jake Fromm is going to the Patriots. The reason it's got to happen is because Tom Brady is 43. And whether he's your quarterback for the next 2 years or whether he's not, you need that next guy. I don't think Nate Stidham is that guy. I think it's time to move on, and Jake Fromm is the next best question mark you're going to get at pick 24. I don't see them trading up to get Justin Herbert, not that far. They're not going to try to get Tua. Again, those guys are going to be long gone by the time it's happening. I see it as Jake Fromm. Maybe it's Jacob Eason. Maybe they surprise us. Maybe it's Julian Love. I just don't see it. Jordan Love. Sorry.
I know, it's so hard not to say Julian Love.
Yeah, I forget what his name is. I just see this being the Jake Fromm pick. I see them reaching for it and saying, hey, look, we've got other needs. We need a tight end, like you said, but that can take a couple years before he's ready to go in the NFL. We need wide receivers, but we took one last year, and that didn't really pan out the way we hoped it did. It's got to be Fromm. It's got to be the quarterback.
Well, Cody's with me. He says the best tight end available if they don't land Austin Hooper in free agency, which they won't.
Well, I think Hunter Henry is. I think Ebron, Henry, and Hooper are all better than any rookie tight end you're getting out of here.
The tight end out of Notre Dame is what the offense needs in the Patriots organization.
And I don't dislike Kmet either.
I know you don't.
I think he's probably second or third on my board, but I actually have a different tight end ahead of him. I have Hunter Bryant, but I don't have him going in the first round.
I know you don't dislike it, but the thing is about it is Belichick's offense runs best when he has tight ends. That's the reason why they got into free agency and pulled out all these veterans like, okay, this guy will fit, this guy will fit. It's not fitting. There's an issue with the offense right now. It's the fact that they don't have those tight ends.
And I just think they go short term.
And this is, it's not about short term because Belichick is trying to prove that he is a better coach than Tom Brady is a quarterback.
But you'd also like to win right now, right?
You do want to win right now.
And I don't think bringing in a tight end that, again, in my opinion, isn't a first-round guy.
And the jump he had from year 2 to year 3 is massive. He had 15 receptions, 162 yards, and that was it 2 years ago. He jumped up. He has 400. He has 43 receptions, 515 yards.
But isn't that a negative?
6 touchdowns. No, it's great.
I get you like the
developing.
progression. I get you like the progression, but God, and then you go, what did we say about Joe Burrow? Oh, well, it's only 1 year.
Then you go.
Doesn't that apply here too?
But the issue about it is why couldn't he find his place as a starter? It's not that he didn't develop. It's like this guy didn't do it because he was still developing. It was like Joe Burrow was so great. Why wasn't he playing year 2
and to be honest,
3?
I'm only saying that because I want to argue against this pick.
I know.
But I'm actually in the other camp where I'm like, I don't care as much in college.
I know.
In the pros, yes, I care. But in college, there are so many guys. It's so hard to cut through the flack. By the time they figure out you're good, maybe they get you for 1 year. I mean, good programs have a lot of talented players. That's just what happens. And I get what you're saying about Bryant. The 1 year thing doesn't really scare me. I just think, again, look at Hawkinson from last year. Look at Fant. Those guys were lauded as like high-tier tight ends. These guys aren't high-tier tight ends coming out. What happened to him? Hawkinson underperformed.
Well,
didn't exactly light the world on fire. Noah Fant, same thing.
The world is a tire burning.
Hawkinson was playing with Matt Stafford and still, who historically doesn't throw to tight ends, to be fair, didn't exactly shine. I just don't see them going in that spot. I think they're going to go quarterback instead. But that's okay though. If there were better tight ends in this draft, I'd say that makes a lot of sense. I just think it's too early. Going to disagree a little bit. A couple more here. Comments. Ian says the Patriots will pick the Houston Astros. Do they need help with their photography?
They're banging on the trash cans.
Okay. Ian also says the Patriots might be picking in a mid to higher first round next year after a mediocre season. AFC East will prevent that. I think you could take Nate Stidham right now and probably win 8 games because your division's as weak as it is. I know Buffalo's there, but Buffalo showed you last year that they couldn't put points up on this defense. As long as the running game's there, and it will be, as long as the defense is there, and it probably will be, I think the Patriots are probably cruising to at least an 8-win season.
I know, Ian. Jake just doesn't want to give Hawkinson the due diligence of him. He had
due diligence.
Yeah, the guy looked like a stud when he was out there. He started off the season like just hot out of the frying pan, and then he got banged up, and then he comes back still sore and goes and still plays well, and then gets hit again and hurt. And it was like, you kill him while he's like there. It's like, I actually think he's doing good. And then you look at Fant. Fant took a little bit going, but late in the season, Fant looked really good. I mean, I get it. They're not out of the thing just flying, put up huge, 100 reception, 1,000 yards,
exactly.
10 touchdowns.
And what do the Patriots need right now? Especially if they bring back Tom Brady.
What wide receiver does that regardless if it's tight end? No.
A.J. Brown. That's all they need. I mean, DK Metcalf got close. I think he had like 895 yards.
I get it.
Terry
But
McLaurin. We had 3 of them last year.
How many receivers were drafted last year?
Debo Samuel got close. That's 4.
My point is it doesn't happen a lot.
No, what about Hunter Renfrow? That was out of the 5th round. He didn't get that many yards, but he had like 500, 600 yards.
My point is you take a chance on a guy like Cole because you want to get back to what you were, and your offense runs better when you have tight ends that can play.
In 12 games, Hawkinson had 367 yards and 2 touchdowns. I get the injury thing, but if you're out there, you got to perform. That's your mantra, right?
With Blow.
Yeah.
Blue.
If you're out there. Oh, so you're a tight end. Who's he supposed to look at first? You.
Yeah,
because I'm a bad quarterback. Like, here you go. All right, we'll move on. Again, tight end to me, building position. You take one, and then you wait 3 years, and then he turns out to be good.
Cody says Jets finished the season 5-2. Are they on the rise?
Yes, as long as Sam Darnold doesn't get mono again. And I don't think the team is great, but I think having him back, they can win games. Part of it, too, back half of the season, you're not playing quite as many motivated teams. Take it with a grain of salt. And every time I pick the Jets to come back, I'm always kicked in the nuts. But maybe 2020 is the Jets' year to take that Oakland-style leap forward where they win 8 or 9 games, and we're like, this team's getting there.
Luke says, worst team at the end of the NFL season gets demoted to XFL for free agency.
I would love it. The best thing about soccer is relegation because teams can't tank because they're always afraid of getting kicked out of the league and not making as much money. They'll never do it because those franchises have been in there forever, and on top of it, you would never give the money up. But that's what makes soccer interesting because the bottom teams get kicked out of your league and they bring new guys in.
Billionaires trying to get along with Vince McMahon.
What happens in soccer? But no, that won't happen. I'm saying it happens in soccer. Billionaires lose their teams.
We got to move on. Number 24, New Orleans Saints.
The New England Saints.
Take Justin Jefferson, wide receiver at LSU. There's your guy, Michael. There he is. I know if Michael's still on or not, but there he is. That's where he's going to fall right there. Makes the most sense to me. I can get to it, but I want you to pick your guy.
Worthy pick. I actually have him taking a different wide receiver, Jalen Reagor. Guy from TCU that ran terrible offense and still put up over 1,000 yards. I think this guy is phenomenal when we're talking about him. I think he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the class. I think he's one of those guys that can play outside, he can play inside. He's not the biggest guy, but he is decently quick. I think he's going to run in the 4.3s as well. He is the guy that kind of reminds me of Devontae Adams a little bit. I don't know that he's quite that explosive athletically, but I actually have him going to the Saints and being a great number 2 with Michael Thomas. I think they need a little bit more of a down-the-field guy.
I think we both agreed they need some help. But one thing Michael Thomas likes to do, he likes to play from the outside. What does Jefferson do? He plays 90% of his snaps in college at the slot position. This is what this guy does. The offense needs another weapon. I'm going to tell you this. And you told me, and I don't want to steal this, we were talking about him, and, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, Burrow had a great season, but you don't throw to a wall and not catch it. I mean, this guy was obviously catching all these balls, but you look at 111 receptions, over 1,500 yards receiving, 18 touchdowns, and everything looks so amazing. But when you have a guy that did what Joe Burrow did, your stats are buffed. Yes. And that's something that a lot of people have to understand going forward with Jefferson. And I think that's why you get a lot of talk about him being a higher pick. But when you give someone like Drew Brees, who's going to be the quarterback for the Saints in the 2020 season, Jefferson can flourish and become a good receiver in this league. This is the best thing that could happen for Jefferson, in my opinion, is going to an organization like the Saints.
And Ryan wants us to recap the Raiders really quick for 12 and 19. I don't mind doing it real quick. I have Isaiah Simmons going to the Raiders at 12, middle linebacker who's by far the best in the class. He's a coverage machine and can play the run as well. And then I have Laviska Shenault only because of need going to Oakland. He's a great tackle-breaking wide receiver. If you haven't looked him up, he's out of Colorado. He's not going to be as highly lauded as guys like Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb that went to bigger schools, but the guy breaks tackles like a machine. I think he'll be good in short work, and then he'll be able to break tackles and give you that explosiveness that you need in Oakland. I would have given him Henry Ruggs, kind of like Drew did if he was there. I think he's going to be the highly sought-after speedster, but I had him going a couple picks before. Chenault's fast. He's bigger.
Yeah, I had Simmons as well. I definitely think they need to do linebacker, but we both agree at 19 they need to focus on that wide receiver group, and I did take Ruggs out of Alabama, that speedster. I kind of think the Raiders will kind of stick back to that fast first mentality that Al Davis pushed. Mark Davis might push this pick, but it's definitely a receiver in their second pick for sure.
Absolutely. Cody says the Saints better go defensive back, but in my opinion, you have Janoris Jenkins coming back who's going to get a full offseason working it. I'm pretty sure he's back. I'm pretty sure he didn't have an expiring contract. I think he had 2 left. So you're going to hang on to Janoris Jenkins more than likely.
He's there.
And then you're going to have Marshawn Lattimore. Could they use more guys with Eli Apple on his way out? Yes. But I also think what kind of made them stall out a little bit was Michael Thomas was like the only option. And when you had the running back, Alvin Kamara, kind of, whether it was due to injury or whether it was due to misuse, not really put up the same type of year we're expecting out of him. The offense floundered a little bit, especially in the playoffs. I think them adding more weapons at wide receiver might even trump cornerback at this point.
All right.
No problem, Ryan.
All right. Number 25, the Minnesota Vikings, in my opinion, take Christian Fulton, the cornerback out of LSU.
Talk about him because I have him going there too. It just makes too much sense.
It does.
It does.
Trey Waynes is probably not going to be there. They who knows what's going to happen with the raging corners. They love running 3 corners at the same time. I mean, top tier corners. If they can't keep Trey Waynes there, they're going to go out and get some kind of corner help. It makes sense. Fulton seems to fit that place. He's good with running with the wide receivers and keeping the separation very tight. I do think he needs to work on one thing. He needs to work on those 50-50 balls and his discipline. It seems like any time that there's a jump ball, he's kind of lacking that category, and you kind of see him jumping routes, which also kind of hurt him. But I think something with the Vikings and that defense, he can learn that stuff and become a valuable option for their defense.
Absolutely. People are going to look at the game against Clemson and say that he got burned a little bit, and he did. But again, you're talking about some of the best players in the national championship. This is a developmental pick, kind of like tight end. Cornerback's a spot that takes a year or two before they get up to speed all the way.
And he was kind of jumping routes, which, assuming something before.
When it doesn't work, it's bad. But when you're Marcus Peters and it works, I mean, Marcus Peters is the same way. When it works, you're like, this guy's a genius. We just got to pick 6. When it doesn't work, you're like, oh, they just scored a touchdown. But I think those kind of momentum changing plays can help. I don't hate guys that are willing to take risks. I would rather them just, take the ball away and win at the catch point like you were talking about, but I don't hate guys that take risks. I like Christian Fulton here too. Vikings are broke. They have the least cap space out of anyone. They got to make it count here. They have to draft in their secondary here, and I think Fulton's a pick.
Absolutely. Number 26, the Miami Dolphins. I'll let you go first.
Let's talk about DeAndre Swift, the first running back off the board. I don't love first-round running backs, but I said, what would the Dolphins do as opposed to what would I do? I think they're going to try to fix this offense, and they're going to try to take all the pressure off their new quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. How do you do that? Offensive line, run game. So they're going to take DeAndre Swift, and they're going to try to establish a running attack here that's going to go and complement their quarterback and not put everything on his shoulders like it kind of was this year with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Especially now when you look at that backfield, they got nobody. I think this is the closest it makes to taking closest to making sense to take first round running back as any team out there.
This is where they focus on the offensive line in my mock draft. They go out and get Austin Jackson, offensive lineman out of USC. His quick feet, excellent agility. He's a little raw, needs to work on his technique, but this would be a great start with a big body, 6'6", 310 pounds, big body, big frame. Work on the offensive line, get Tua someone to help him.
Yeah, offensive line is not a bad pick for the Dolphins. I like it. We'll move on. We'll talk about our next pick, which is the Seahawks. I have this being where Clavion Chason finally goes. I have some teams kind of holding off on these edge rushers with some of the question marks. Ultimately, does it happen that way? No, because they're probably going to go to the combine, and they're going to lift a lot of weights, and they're going to run really fast, and everyone's going to be like, wow, can't wait to have them on my team. But again, when you're playing at LSU, you have top-tier talent around you. I know you're going up against some of the better offensive linemen, too. I just want to see more consistent production than what we saw out of Chason. And again, I would be scared taking him as any one of these other teams. I think there's going to be teams that fall in love with wide receivers, fall in love with some of the offensive linemen, even some of the secondary players. Maybe a guy like this drops off if he doesn't impress at the combine.
Luke says he felt like he said that about the St. Louis losing the Rams, but he doesn't want to talk about that. What about the legacy taking the risk? I'll start Marshall Faulk. Can you clarify that for us, man? I don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
If you're talking about Swift going to the Dolphins, I mean, he is kind of Marshall Faulk-esque. He's kind of
if you're talking about taking a risk on running backs in the first round.
He's kind of that small frame, 5'9" body, can catch well, run well, very. I mean, all around it, he's a stud.
Just to sum it up, I'm not saying that there aren't guys that could be worth it in the first round as a running back, because there are very talented guys. Like you look at Saquon Barkley, very talented running back. But why do you not want to spend the second overall pick on him? Because you can have years like the Giants had this year, where not even to his fault, but because the offensive line wasn't as good at run blocking as it needed to be, and because of injuries, he wasn't the same guy. Look at Todd Gurley. Look at Melvin Gordon when he first got to San Diego. Well, it was San Diego back then, to be fair. Look at some of these other first high drafted running backs that, again, they get into the league, they take a bit of a beating, and they're not the same guy. You can go and take a third, a fourth, a fifth, or a sixth round pick and go get 80 to 90% of the same level of production that you're going to get out of the first round guy. That's why I don't like taking running backs high. Not because I think they won't be good players. I think Josh Jacobs is a great example of that. You can get good players in the first round, but then you can look at Devin Singletary in the year he had and say, is it that much better than what Devin Singletary did splitting carries with Frank Gore in Buffalo? Is that worth a first-round pick to you? And again, that's the debate. I don't think it is. I think you can wait to the third round, go take somebody, and if you have the offensive line and a little bit of a passing game, he can succeed. Just avoid Trent Richardson, and you're good.
I'm kind of more towards the middle of this. I think when a running back like Saquon Barkley falls to you at number 2, you take him. I mean, it's plain and simple. He's a generation running back. It's kind of like Adrian Peterson. You take him. You take him. He's another first-round running back. You don't skip on those generation running backs. I get it. Saquon had a bad year last year, but guess what? Moving forward, the Giants don't have to focus running back because they got a very strong presence there in the running back room, a guy that's going to be able to do a lot in the future. Now, against that argument is you look at the two teams that were in the Super Bowl, and you look at the Chiefs and the 49ers, neither of them have a dominant run back as one. It's a committee. And
let's dig a little bit deeper into that because that's a good point. Titans took Derrick Henry with the second-round pick. Again, not a first-round running back, had all that success with him. Talk about the Patriots. Outside of their running back from 2 years ago, Michelle Sony, whatever. They've got a committee of running backs that are all plug and play.
Sony.
Yes. Look at the Ravens. I know they brought in Mark Ingram, who was a first-round running back. But again, they've done it forever without those first-round level running backs. And the Saints said we don't need him. Same kind of scenario where this isn't a guy that you take and just hang on your team forever. They have had a lot of success in the playoffs without high-caliber running backs or highly drafted running backs. And then you look at Zeke. He got paid. Is he the same guy? I don't know. You look at Todd Gurley. You look at a lot. Even Alvin Kamara this year.
It's hard to pass up on a generational running back, and I get it. And that's why
I understand
you take
it's hard.
And Swift could be one of those.
I like him. I think he's a great player. I think he sneaks into this first round. But again, I think especially this year, J.K. Dobbins looks like he's pretty good. Zach Moss out of Utah looks like he's pretty good. You got Jonathan Taylor, also looks like a great running back. There are guys that are going to be available beyond this pick that you could take in the second round, especially as the Dolphins with all this capital, and probably be almost as good as long as your offensive line plays well. The difference is he'll go somewhere else and people will be like, see, look, Swift is better because he's playing with a better offensive line, and that's just not always the case.
It's not. All right, we got to move on. Number 27, the Seattle Seahawks take, in my opinion, Terrell Lewis, edge rusher out of Alabama. I get it. He's injury prone. Elbow in 2017. ACL in 2018. This is a player that still is in the developmental stage, but I believe with Pete Carroll and the way that he runs his defense, you can make an explosive burst guy with great length a very important piece to your defense. This is a guy that's been able to pick a lot of players late into the draft and make them starters in the NFL after year 2 or 3. I don't think that Terrell Lewis will take that long, but it's a possibility. But Pete Carroll's there for the long run. I know they want a win now scenario, but Clowney's not going to stick around. They don't have the cap space to put $20 million plus a year onto a defensive end. They got to fix that hole. That's the reason why they went out there and traded for him. This is the guy this late in the round. Edge rushers are getting tight, but I like this guy out of Alabama.
Well, I'm on my edge rusher kind of spurt here too, where I think we're gonna have a run. But again, I only have a couple off the board at this point. This is my, Chase on going to the Seahawks was my third edge rusher because I see so many other teams going in other directions. Even though edge rusher is incredibly important, I just don't know that there's quite the same talent there this year. Then again, kind of like I talked about, a lot of workout warriors here. Terrell Lewis might be one of them. Don't love him as a player. Again, a lot of talent around you. You didn't exactly shine all the time, but he could be one of those developmental guys that you take at this point in the round, and he becomes a great player in the NFL. I think that you'll get one or two of those guys out of this draft, and everyone will say, see, you were wrong about them, but then you'll have like 4 or 5 or 6 of them that don't really work out, and then we'll forget that I said that those guys might not work out. That's usually the way draft coverage goes. Let's talk about the Ravens.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about Julian Okwara, an edge defender from Notre Dame, on his way there, because yes, Judon was great for them this year, but they had a lot of trouble generating pressure without the blitz. They blitzed on half of their plays. First team really in the NFL for a long time to do that. I think adding a guy that can get some pressure without having to send the blitz all the time is important to them. I think Okwara is as best of a chance you're going to get one of those guys at this point in the draft.
Yeah.
Again, physical freak, question mark on production.
I agree. And losing Judon might be an issue, but that's why they have the tag. He'll get tagged if they can't get a deal out. I think linebacker's the issue, and they're going to go with Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma. This guy has done 2 seasons plus with 100-plus tackles in the season. He looks like a stud. He plays with urgency. He possesses that sideline-to-sideline speed that you want to have. And in my opinion, he's ready to play 3-down linebacker in the NFL right now.
That last statement is where you lost me. The rest of it, I was like, you're right, absolutely. I mean, he's got the sideline-to-sideline speed. He's great in run defense. I think he still processes the game a little slowly. There's times where he kind of like freezes up and he's not in the right space in coverage. I think that has been the biggest thing. He's been great going forward. He hasn't been quite as good going back into coverage. I don't know that he's the guy that's like plug and play. You take him and all of a sudden, the hole is fixed. I think he's a developmental guy. I think once you take him, if he's working with good coaches and he can learn the game and learn to react faster.
John Harbaugh's a great coach.
Absolutely. If he can learn and react to the game faster, I think he can be a great linebacker. And I like him better than maybe anyone else in this class from that kind of like upward ceiling. But I think he's got some negatives from the beginning that maybe he's not the plug-and-play guy. And in Baltimore, he doesn't need to be the plug-and-play guy. So I like the pick. I just don't necessarily know if he's going to go in the first round. We'll see what happens. Someone might fall in love with the physicality.
I am, and so is Cody. He says he agrees with Murray. Felt like they have a void to fill after Mosley left.
I think so too.
It's okay that you don't feel like he is an every down back or a 3-down back. It's right now they have a hole. What's there to replace? If they had an option to take,
it could be Troy Dye too.
If they had an option, Simmons would definitely be there.
I think Troy Dye should be in this conversation because he's not as physically gifted.
Kenneth Murray has done it multiple years in a row,
and so is Troy Dye at Oregon. And I like him. He's not as physically gifted, but I think you don't always need to be the most athletic guy to be the best linebacker. He's, in my opinion, got the better football IQ. I like Kenneth Murray, and I think he's going to be eventually a great linebacker if he can work with a good coach. But right now, I think he's got some negatives against him, and that's all I'm saying. I think he's got the positives. He has the elite athleticism that you want to see out of a linebacker.
Yeah.
And that might be enough to take him here. I agree they need a linebacker, but just having elite how many athletes don't make it in the NFL?
A lot.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of worry about on Murray. At the very least, I think he's going to be a great run defender out of the gate.
Cody says, that's why I feel Taylor is the best running back.
I like Taylor as a running back, as a pure running back, but he's taken a lot of carries, is one of the negatives. And again, you look at guys like Monty Ball and even Melvin Gordon, when he came out of college, it almost took like 2 years worth of rest to get him back to where he could play at an elite level. I think Jonathan Taylor, I worry about the tread coming off the tires. I think he's the best pure runner in this draft. Pure runner, as in like, I'm just going to hand him the ball and let him carry the ball. That's important at running back. But I think what you get out of guys like J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift and Zach Moss is the receiving ability, some of the pass blocking. I think those guys, because of their versatility, are more valuable than Jonathan Taylor is. Maybe not the best runner. And if you're going to go somewhere like Tennessee, where you've got Derrick Henry that's basically that guy, that can work. But a lot of teams ask their running backs to catch the ball more than the Titans do, and I think that's why they're going to value those other guys more than they might value Jonathan Taylor.
Cody, I'm not even going to say it because he had a comment right back to it, but I got to. He says, done it year and year in the Big Ten. Well, Jake would say he's done it year and year in the Big 12. That's exactly what you would say. That's your comment would be right back.
Any other position, I'm like, that's awesome. He's done it, he's been in the game, making things happen for years. But at running back, I'm like, yeah, but all the hits, right? Isn't that the scary thing?
All right. Let's move on to number 29, Tennessee Titans. Who are they taking, man? That's your team.
Uter Gross-Matos. You had him going off the board a little bit ahead of me.
Yes.
Same thing. Elite athleticism,
Yeah.
question mark in production. I think
Yeah.
the Titans are just desperate for an edge rusher, and even though they've been good at avoiding just taking needs, when a guy like this falls there, even if he's a question mark, you're like, look, we desperately need an edge rusher, and we probably don't have the money to pay one. You draft him.
I think you need a need too, and I think it's going to be corner. You're going to be taking C.J. Henderson out of Florida. He lacks the interception numbers that needs to be improved as a tackler, but I think
He'll fit right in on the Titans. We never pick the ball.
But I think with what I just blanked out your coach's name. Help me.
Mike Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel can help because he is that defensive style coach. He can sit there and train. You got someone like Byard. If Logan Ryan sticks around, which I don't think so, I think that's why you're taking this guy. You still have other backs that can train this or teach this guy how to play it. I like his size. I like his length. I like his speed. And he is a man coverage, top-notch kind of player.
I agree. I like C.J. Henderson a lot. I don't actually even have him in my first round. I have him going early in the second round. I think he's a great coverage guy. Even though you saw his production dip in the second half of the college season, it was because of an ankle injury, and I don't really worry about it. Again, you're playing in the SEC. He's one of the best heads-up corners, and you're right. He doesn't generate turnovers. That might drop him down in some drafts. But I think he's one of these unsung heroes that when he goes in the second round, somebody's be getting a better player than his draft position might suggest.
Luke says it will never be the NFL, obviously, but talk about the XFL. But it's like the WNBA to the NBA. It's not the same, but he likes how professional the XFL looks these past few weeks.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. This is the first year we're running it. So I get what you're saying. It's not the same product, but especially